A show of defiance. Demonstrations sweep across China amid anger at the government's strict COVID-19 measures. Utility crews in Ukraine scramble to restore power as temperatures drop and Russian strikes continue.
Holding white pieces of paper in a show of defiance, demonstrations in China have spread across the country. Protesters are angry over the harsh COVID-19 measures. On the third day of protests, some of the activists were shouting out against the Communist Party and its head of state, Xi Jinping.
We want basic human rights. We want freedom. We want to free our country from this on fire, absurd regulations.
For my home, for my country, for my people, because I'm Chinese.
We don't want any coronavirus tests, this woman says. We want freedom. We have human dignity. We are human, says this man. We are Chinese. We need constitutionality. Over in Shanghai, there are reports hundreds of people clashed with police on Sunday night. People also took to the streets in Wuhan and Chengdu. Meanwhile, coronavirus infections in China are soaring in recent days, with nearly another 40,000 new COVID cases on Sunday, triggering more lockdowns.
Utility crews scrambled to restore power, water and heating in Ukraine. According to electricity producers, they're now supplying 80% of power against a backdrop of freezing temperatures. It's despite the onslaught of further Russian strikes in eastern and southern regions on Sunday. In his nightly address, President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Ukraine's unity is a sign of its strength. He said that together and helping each other, we will pass this challenge of war as well. This winter, Russia's attempt to use the cold against people. Meanwhile, the Belgian Prime Minister visited Bucha and Borodyanka. Alexander De Croo had a look at the largest mass grave discovered in Ukraine, with more than 450 bodies. If you've seen this, then I cannot imagine how you're going to negotiate with Russia, he said. After this, our only goal can be to help liberate Ukraine. In Borodyanka, more than 1,000 buildings were destroyed, but despite everything that's happened, around 80% of the inhabitants have returned here. Residents in Ukraine's recently liberated city of Kherson are facing a difficult choice. Stay and receive food donations despite the harsh winter amid intensified Russian bombardments, or decide to leave their homes in the southern city for a better chance of survival. Kherson has become the second Mariupol, said volunteer Viktor Mirinov. Now we need to get as many people out as possible. There's no electricity, water and food, he explained. Help is needed. Hospitals need help. They need medicine. We need to do as much as we can so our people have a warm place to stay and be provided with all the necessities. Reports say that Russian forces are digging in further east of Kherson. With the recent intense shelling, civilians are increasingly choosing to flee. At least 7 people are now confirmed to have died after Saturday's deadly landslide on the Italian island of Ischia. The death toll includes a 3-week-old baby and 2 young siblings, a girl aged 5 years old and her 11-year-old brother. The other dead were the parents of the baby boy, a 31-year-old island resident and a Bulgarian tourist. The Italian government has declared a state of emergency. Search and rescue teams continue to dig for the 5 people that officials say are still missing. But the risk of further landslides remains. The tragedy was caused by heavy rainfall. Around 126 millimeters of rain fell in just 6 hours, dislodging the mud, which caused the buildings to collapse and push vehicles into the sea. According to officials, it's the heaviest they've had for 20 years. The government has set aside €2 million for the rescue efforts and for restoring public services.
A landslide in Cameroon's capital has left at least 14 people dead. Dozens remain missing as rescue teams continue digging through the rubble in Yaoundé. Officials say the area is a very dangerous spot and advise residents to leave before authorities arrive to clear the site. The tragedy happened during a funeral ceremony on a football pitch on Sunday when an 18-metre high embankment collapsed.
France has seen a boom in the number of people behind bars, reaching a record of over 70,000 prisoners this year. And this rise in numbers is pushing the boundaries of what prisons can cope with. According to data from the Ministry of Justice, prison density has reached peak levels, which means there are over 12,000 more people than places available. On a European scale, France is still average in terms of prisoners per 100,000 inhabitants. But this ratio could increase from 92 to 107% if this latest data is taken into account. That places it the same level as Ukraine or Greece. This strict penal policy has left some prisons dramatically overpopulated. 56 institutions in France face a density of 150%, and 3 prisons even exceed 2 prisoners for every place. Last year in the European Union, Finland had the fewest prisoners, with 43.3 prisoners compared to the population, with the Czech Republic at the top of the table. In comparison, Turkey and Russia dwarfed these numbers, with over 325 prisoners per 100,000 people incarcerated.
Hundreds of thousands of people gathered in Mexico City for a pro-government rally led by President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. The so-called People's March marked 4 years in office for Mexico's leftist leader. It comes as a response to the wake of recent anti-government protests over plans to reform the country's electoral authority.
We consider that the fundamental issue is not quantitative, but qualitative. That is, the equitable distribution of income and wealth. The ultimate goal of a state is to create the conditions for people to live happily and free from misery and fear.
Opposition voices claim many people were forced to participate in the rally, which Obrador denies. Mexico's ruling party controls 22 out of the 32 states, which serves as a key advantage heading into the next presidential elections, scheduled for 2024.
Violence broke out in Brussels after Morocco's 2-0 victory over Belgium in the World Cup Sunday night. Around 150 people set fire to rubbish bins, broke city equipment and damaged vehicles. Police used water cannons and fired tear gas to disperse the crowds as fans with Moroccan immigrant roots celebrated enthusiastically. The kids are crazy. They are 14 or 15 years old and they're breaking everything. I have a business here. All the scooters, everything, they broke everything. It's not fair play, it's just soccer. We have to try to keep some joy and cheerfulness. I don't understand this violence. Frankly, it's very disappointing. Our youth is disappointing. Parts of the Belgium capital were sealed off and the subway and trams had to be interrupted on police orders. It wasn't just in Brussels. There were also disturbances in Antwerp and Liège.
Lighting up the streets of Doha since the beginning of the World Cup, these street marshals play a key role in guiding fans out of the stadiums and directing them to the city's 4 metro lines. But owing to their unique approach to the role, these migrant workers, many of whom are Kenyan, have managed to turn a simple job into one of the tournament's most popular attractions.
I'm really excited about it because I'm interacting with people from all walks of life whom I've never met before, and I'm really enjoying.
Their enthusiasm has quickly seen them turn into firm fan favourites. One Kenyan marshal's street performance went viral on the internet. He's now known simply as Metro Man.
I'm obsessed with this work because it's work and it's fun and interesting, and I love it.
As the ultimate reward for his hard work, Metro Man was invited onto the pitch to warm up the crowd ahead of Friday's game between England and the USA. proving that anything is possible at this year's World Cup.